Okay, all set. We're recording.
Good. So welcome, everybody. This is a meeting of the Capital Improvement Subcommittee of this Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. The purpose of today's meeting is to begin to talk about the prospective draft report that this subcommittee will be in charge of drafting. I want to give special thanks and shout out to Lillian and Chuck, who volunteered to join Wendy and me on this committee. Otherwise, it would have been just two of us. And Mark, will you stay on the call for some period of time?
Yes, I'm here till the end.
Oh, okay, good. So I've actually done, as I'm sure each of you has done, a little bit of thinking about how to organize this report. And what I did was I went to the Word version of last year's almost final report and started marking it up. I started doing that 3 weeks ago. And then I made a second version 2 today, where I proposed some assignments for each of us. And what I want to do is go over that document and make sure that everybody is okay with the assignments that I've considered giving each of you and me. But before we do that, does anybody have any comments about the overall direction of the report? Anything new and different that he or she thinks we should be doing this year from last year? So I'll just throw it open for that.
Go ahead, Lillian.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, my only thought, I didn't really look at content and format, but my only thought on some of these considerations is that because the CWMP will continue to cost more year over year, that we should be mindful about projects that go out years and years, so we don't overcommit ourselves. That's just one of my thoughts. And I don't know when the vote will take place on the Prop 2.5, but if that doesn't happen, it's going to be pretty significant. So I think we should just be mindful when we make recommendations.
So if I understand you correctly, that you think that there, notwithstanding the fact that there is a 5-year projection, and the last section of the report, in the event that we decide to keep it, will make some comments about the 5 years. Your thought is that we shouldn't place a ton of reliance on years 3, 4, and 5, or years 4 and 5, because funding sources may change and or the debt exclusion measure may not pass. Is that your comment?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Lillian,
Yeah,
did you have...
I think that the last year you addressed the various factors that might change. So
Right.
That fits right into what Wendy's comments have been. My general comment about last year's CIP report is that it was the first time that we did not deal with specific projects. And I thought that was a really very good change to talk about CWMP, general funds, and enterprise in general. Because basically what it does is it gives the town council a broader view of what all of this is about. So I think it's a good format, and I support doing the same again.
Right. And we can change the format. We're certainly not stuck with the categories, but I agree with you that it had a certain flow to it, and it also allowed us not to drown in the detail of specific projects and to issue.
That was a distinct improvement over, as you said, we got stuck in the weeds in previous years.
Yeah,
So it was a good change.
okay. Chuck, have you got any thoughts?
Do. So the two thoughts were, I looked at the prior year report and just started thinking about it. It would be great. I assume when you say you're going to share your thoughts that you're going to either
Share my
screen share or
Yep.
you'll share your Word doc. So we're all kind of working off the same draft. And
Yep.
B, I agree with Lillian. I looked back at the prior 2 years as well, and I just thought last year's was, if I'm thinking in terms of the reader, I thought last year's content was a lot more palatable and usable than some of the prior stuff. So I agree that kind of trying to improve on what was a good evolution last year makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Okay. Now the one, before I share my screen, I just wanted to bring up one comment. As some of you know, I've been heavily involved in various efforts to discuss with the town council and others the wisdom of the proposed cable landing at Dowses Beach. And Mark, this is really a question for you. I looked through the I guess it's part 2 is really the meaty part. No, it's part 4 is the town manager recommendations. It's 103 pages. And there are only a couple of references, one to the Vineyard Wind project and one to the Park City Wind project. And those are both in the context of making some modifications to the sewer layout plan to achieve savings, courtesy of these pending wind projects. Is there a reason why the wind projects weren't referred to more in the overall capital improvement discussion by the town departments?
Those aren't our projects, Hector. The wind
Right.
project. We're not building those projects. Those aren't our projects. They're not part of our
Right.
capital plan because they're not our projects.
Right, but they definitely impact our capital plan to the extent that we're modifying a couple of the routes for the sewers in effect to optimize the expenditures that the developer is making in opening the roads to put into conduits. I take your point, they're not our projects, but it strikes me that this subcommittee can't be completely silent on the issue of the wind projects. That's my only point. It's not a trick question, and I agree with you. We wouldn't have a lot to say about the wind projects, but I thought it was striking that when I look at what's going on in this town, and I think, okay, what are the biggest things to happen to the town of Barnstable in the last 100 years? One is clearly the sewer project. The other one is these 3 wind projects, only one of which has been approved, but 2 of which we have signed HCAs for. So that was just my comment, and I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that, but that was just something I wanted to throw out. That's something I've been mulling.
Well, I guess since it's not one of our projects, it would be a revenue source. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah, the wind projects do have some revenue sources associated with them for the town. Of course, property tax revenue associated with the assets that they're building, the infrastructure, the utility infrastructure that they're building, as well as the host community agreement payments
Right.
that we're making under those contracts. So that's the town piece, but yeah, we're not constructing those assets, and that part of anything the town council has approved from an appropriation standpoint and funding standpoint.
Right. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not sure if anyone else has any comments before we move on. No? Okay. Is Lillian still on, Mark, or did she?
Yes, I'm here. The video went crazy, so I stopped. I'm still here.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to share my screen, and what I would propose to do is we can talk through this document, and this shouldn't take a lot of time. And then what I would propose to do is circulate this draft Word document to each of you. And each of you can work on your sections. And then, as Wendy suggested earlier today, we should talk about schedules for subsequent meetings of this committee. If we have to have a final document done and dusted, I think by the first week of April. So
Let me just interject this. So
please.
I'm thinking that if we can have our draft ready for review by full CFAC by the end of March, on the March 27th meeting. That way, if the other members of the committee have any suggestions, we will still have a couple of weeks to edit and make those changes.
Right.
Is that possible?
That's eminently doable in my
Okay, then let's
Um,
try to aim for a draft to CFAC on the 27th.
Yeah,
Okay.
our next two CFAC meetings are going to be the 13th and the 27th. Isn't that
Right.
correct?
You're right.
Okay. Yeah, so certainly by the 27th, and then April 10th is the deadline to have a final approved
Correct.
version. So any tweaks that we want to make after the 27th, we can make it at the April 10th CFAC meeting.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, good. Perfect. All right. So let me share my screen, see if I can figure out how to do this with Mark's help. Where's the document? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So as you might be able to see, no, I guess you can't see. This is it's a CIP CFAC draft document version 2, and you can see I've already tweaked the front page. I added the newest lineup of committee members for overall CFAC, including Christopher Lauzon. Is that how you pronounce his name, Mark?
I think it's Lausanne.
Lauzon, okay. And and down here I put the CFAC subcommittee, and April 10th I guess will be the deadline, so I'll make that change. Okay, Betty Lutke is joining the meeting. Yeah, okay. All right. Hello, Betty. Are you there?
I am here. Hello.
Hello.
Sorry to drop in late.
Welcome to our subcommittee meeting.
Thank you.
Are you here for any particular mission? Are you filling in for Paula by any chance?
No, I'm just an interested party. That's about
Great.
all I can say.
Okay.
Wonderful. We're glad you're here.
That's
Okay.
great. So Betty, what we've started, we had some introductory comments, and I've just shared screen the first draft of this report, and we're about to go through page by page.
Okay, great.
So April 10th would be the deadline and the date that we put on this to approve it.
Okay.
Now on page 2 is and here's where we're getting into the draft assignments, and I want people's perspective. So here, Chuck, I thought you have sort of a good eye for narrative and for overview of and you also ask a lot of questions so I thought maybe it would be appropriate for you to take a look at this section. I found this section to be okay. In a lot of ways, it summarizes what's what's in the front part of the actual document. And so the readers, i.e. the town council members, in general, they're pretty familiar with this project. However, with the methodology, however, other readers, to the extent we have non-town council members, like interested members of the community, reading our final report, this introduction is helpful because it gives a summary. But Chuck, if you're amenable, I would ask that you sort of take a look at this and modify it as you wish.
Happy to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought, let me just interject here.
Please.
I thought that the note that we had from a note on the 5-year capital planning that was part of this intro last year was a very good summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, all right. So that was, you mean the report from 2 years ago?
No, the one that we submitted last year in
Okay.
April of 2022. After evaluating all of this, there was a note
Yeah.
on the 5-year capital plan.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
thought that was a very, very nice, succinct summary.
Yeah. Okay. That's still in my report. We'll get to that.
Okay, sounds great.
But Chuck, take a look at this and see if there's more color. I think you have, if you want to add a paragraph or two, I think, or subtract, you have the room to do that. By the way, when I made up this version 2, I actually changed the fiscal year references and the 5-year fiscal year references, and where the document needs updated charts, as you can see down here, I highlighted them in yellow to indicate that these are old numbers.
Right.
So, and indeed, in the narrative where there were dollar figures, I highlighted this first blank, approval for blank dollars in capital projects, but further on in the document, as you'll see, I just put in a blank space for the dollar figures. So anyway, so the yellow means that we need new charts. Now here's a question. I think Nathan helped us with these charts last year. Is this something that, for example, Chuck, do you think you could paste in this chart from this year's document? Or is this something we should ask Mark or one of Mark's staff people to do?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
Um,
Assuming you want to keep this chart.
yeah, so under the premise that we're going to keep it, I'm happy to take a shot at populating, but in the past, as you said, Nathan always checked our numbers and almost always had either corrections or updated numbers. So as long as that happens somewhere in the process, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Well, it's up to you, and maybe we can look to Mark or one of the people on his team to help us with this. But that's a second order issue. All right. Now, the second section, I raised my hand and thought I would take a crack at this if everybody's amenable to this. I like the emphasis that was written in last year's report that this is one of the most important areas of focus for the town of Barnstable, if not the most important area of focus, certainly from a budgetary and from a capital planning perspective for the next decade, if not 3 decades. So I would plan to continue that emphasis. I may want to talk about some of the larger allocations, and I may want to talk about some of the modifications that were made from the CWMP allocations from last year. But in general, this is a good section, and I would plan to keep it. And then here on page 4, the top of page 4, the CWMP has to continually reevaluate projects. It's here that I'll put in a mention of the potential, and I'm saying potential wind power cable landings. And so I'm going to introduce that as one of the factors that the town must, take into account as they evaluate spending for the various aspects of CWMP. And then below these bullet points, this is a section that I think Tracy put in from last year, and I may keep this or I may modify it, but I haven't quite gotten that far yet. Does
That sounds
anybody have any comments on the CWMP section that they'd like to make? Anything that they think should definitely be in here, or any changes they think should be made?
I think that all of the points that you have you're making are relevant, and the clearer we can make it for the general public and for town council, the better. So I think it looks good.
Good. And as you were speaking, Lillian, another thought occurred to me. Should we make a reference to the possible, and I'm saying possible because council hasn't approved it yet, but to the possible debt exclusion measure? My thought is that that's some reference to that as a pending matter, ought to be brought up into this section somewhere. Okay, well, hearing no comments, I think I'll play around with this, and I'll plan to have a revised section for our next CIP subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
And then on to the general funds section. Wendy, I thought this might be one that you would consider tackling.
Okay,
In thinking about the general fund section, I was struck by Neil Kleinfeld's 2 emails, and in particular his second one, where he looked at the percentage of his key findings in his February 28th email. And I would leave this up to you to incorporate or not, but his comment was that for 100% of the CWMP recommendations and submissions were in turn recommended by the town manager. The enterprise section, 86% of the projects and 95% of the spend was recommended. The general fund is where the town manager cut back dramatically from what had been proposed through the evaluation process. And I think some discussion along those lines might be worth injecting into this section, Wendy, if you agree.
that's fine. I think if there's significant changes, we should address it.
Yeah, and the differences with respect to the other sections. Now, Neil in his email, conveys a couple of comments from Mark. So, for example, on CWMP, Mark explained, quote, "We have existing resources that will allow us to bring forward all of the fiscal 2024 CWMP projects." And then he made a similar comment for the enterprise projects, that since they're funded through user fees, the town has the ability to adjust, i.e. increase the user fees to accommodate most of the enterprise fund projects that were recommended, but we'll get to enterprise funds in a second. Anyway, I thought Neil's analysis was interesting, and so I'd recommend, Wendy, and as you look at this, you take a look at what Neil wrote.
Absolutely.
The spreadsheets. Chuck,
Hector,
or
I think,
Lillian?
Hector,
Go
can you
ahead.
hear me? Yeah,
Is that
I think, yeah, it's me, Mark. I think Councilor Lucky has her hand raised. She might have a
Oh.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Betty, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, nobody said anything when you talked about the override. And I think that's a terrific idea to put that in there. I
Yep.
know the four of us had a conference call today on this, trying to learn more about it. And I think any kind of way to get in a very factual,
Yep.
very black and white way to help people understand would
Yep.
be tremendously important. So nobody spoke up, but I think it's a great idea to
Yeah.
put that in here and start to get the word out on that and the impact it would have, or I don't know what level of detail, but anyways, but certainly to mention it. That's all I want to say.
Okay, and I agree with that. And Mark, you've given us your PowerPoint for the town council as of, was it January when you did the PowerPoint? So I would propose to use that, or early February, I would propose to use that as the basis for, as Betty says, factual comments. We obviously, as a committee, aren't going to be we're not in a position to endorse or market the debt exclusion, but I think Betty's point is a good one, and she's basically took the words out of my mouth that I thought it'd be good to introduce the topic and explain what it is. And Mark, you had some analysis about the median house would have an additional tax burden of $260 a year or whatever. That those sorts of comments I think would be helpful to the layperson who's reading this document.
Yes, Hector, if you have any questions in writing that part of your report, feel free to bounce your ideas off of me.
Okay.
If you need assistance, okay?
Okay.
Again, this is your report. I don't want to write it for you. I don't want
Yeah.
it, that coming from me. I want it to come from the committee members, but I'm happy to support you in any way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. All right, so that covers the general funds. Unless Wendy, you have any more comments or questions, or anyone else? Okay,
Yeah, I don't at this point in time, Hector.
okay,
So when I get home, I can read the section and really flesh it out.
yeah, okay. All right, Lillian, I thought you got the most experience of any of us on this committee, and I thought the enterprise funds are sort of a strange animal because they are funded by user fees. So I thought this might be one where you could tackle it. One suggestion I have is that the water pollution control spending is, water issues are endemic in this town, and they're maintaining water quality and reducing the nitrogen in the runoff. Both of those are very, very important for the continued health of this town and of our economy. So the water pollution control spending in the Hyannis Enterprise Fund, it strikes me that those would be interesting to comment on, and any, the gist of the proposals that were made in the town manager's recommendation. Those would be important to discuss.
We can do that.
Okay.
Hector, can I just go back to the CWMP just for one quick second?
Sure. Please.
in one of the last presentations on the CWMP and the extension of that project into, farther reaching areas, such as the Prince Cove area in Marston's Mills. One of the things that concerned me is that there was an item in the ask list to do a study on shellfish as a way to possibly not tackle that area. And I think it's really important for this particular body to understand that the far-reaching areas are just as important as the other areas. And from what I understand with regard to shellfish and the ability for them to filter water, oysters to filter out water, there's no amount of shellfish that they can put into that body of water, from what I understand from my discussions with the Clean Water Coalition, that could reduce the need for sewering of that area. So I just want to, kind of suggest that maybe as the town go forward with choosing projects, they make sure that, each area is looked at with the same intensity.
Sure, and with the same intensity, but also with a view to the urgency of the issue. So you're saying Prince Cove, and forgive me, is that Marston's Mills or is that Katuitt or both?
It feeds into Katuitt Harbor.
Yeah,
So it is, I believe Prince Cove Marina is in Marston's Mills.
right.
But it is, that the Mills River, all that watershed that comes into that body of water filters into North Bay and Katuitt Harbor. And from what I understand, that's a major reason why those bodies of water are deemed as a Class D waterway. So I don't, it's great to say, oh, we can not sewer there if we put in oyster farms, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation. So I just want to make sure as time goes on that the town is just as inclusive in the far-reaching areas as it is in some of the other locations.
So if you were going to make an editorial comment, as a social scientist would say, a value statement, you would probably say, in your opinion, the town isn't paying sufficient attention to the urgency of sewering to address this problem. And you might also say that they're using aquaculture as sort of an excuse not to sewer. Is that?
Well, I think that's just one area they'd like to explore. But to spend $200,000 on an aquaculture study, which probably could just be obtained by the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, in my mind is silly. And that, with regard to possibly replacing the sewer systems in that area or the sewer line, is since that is, I think, the dirtiest body of water in Barnstable. I think it's short-sighted.
Okay.
But I don't want to say that, I don't want to accuse anybody of not paying the proper attention. I think that's too strong of a word or statement. But I just think we need to be conscious of the broader range implications of the project.
Okay, I think that's a good point.
Did you call me or Mark first?
You're on the committee, so we're going to call you first.
Okay, I think that what we can do, instead of getting into comments that are our own, we should mention that the the priorities for the sewering is based on the most urgent and polluted areas at this point. And that and it is the intention of the 208 plan to ultimately sewer the town of Barnstable.
Right.
The fact that, you know, I've been at this since 2015. So they have looked at both the traditional and non-traditional ways of dealing with wastewater and pollution. So I think in order for us to avoid any kind of controversial statements, we should just mention that the priorities are based on the levels of wastewater that needed our attention most, and then we are working our way down.
Okay,
Just leave it at that.
all right. Mark?
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 Thank you, Hector. Yeah, I just wanted to add that I agree with what Lillian says, and I just want to be clear that the project proposed for Warren's Cove is not to replace any planned sewer expansion that would
Exactly.
benefit that area. This is just an additional option that may help us achieve our goal of nitrogen removal in that area even faster if the feasibility turns out to prove that it will help us do that. But in no way will it replace, as Wendy was saying, it's not an alternative solution to sewer expansion in any way. I just want to make sure that that's clear for the committee, that it's not one or the other. The solution is everything that we can do, including IA systems in that area, if IA technology is proven out to reduce nitrogen to acceptable levels as well.
Okay, all right. That's a good point. And let me ask whoever knows the answer to this question, Wendy, perhaps you, in which phase of the CWMP is sewering expected to come to Prince Cove?
Oh, you know, I don't have the plan in front of me.
Mark, do you?
Probably phase 2, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, there are projects included in phase 2 and phase 3 that will improve the 3 Bay area, which is where Prince Cove is located. The first thing we need to do is to build that spine that goes east-west across town, which has been appropriated already, the Route 28 West expansion. That's the very first thing we have to do. But yeah, there'll be projects in both phases 2 and 3 that will address that particular area.
So in the second decade and the third decade of the first 30 years.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's all based on priority.
Yeah.
The levels of wastewater pollution that exists at the time.
Okay.
Let me just mention, for anybody who might be interested in it, I recently wrote a detailed case study at the CWMP for a member of Congress in relation to the municipal challenges of unfunded federal mandates. And I wrote it as a private citizen, and so it does not. And I included a proviso that it does not reflect the opinions of either town council, town leadership, or CFAC. But if you are interested in the nitty-gritty of CWMP and how it got started, I have it.
I would like to see it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to read, Lily.
Yeah, I agree. That would be great.
I'd
Okay.
love to see it too. Absolutely. Love to see it.
Great. Well, Lillian, if you'd be willing to circulate it to everybody on this call, that would be wonderful.
That will be fine. Do you think that will be appropriate, Mark?
Yeah, certainly you can share it with everyone here.
Yeah, and again, I stress that I wrote it as an individual citizen
Yep.
and did not represent CFAC or the town in any way.
An
But it has everything you ever wanted to know about CFAC,
Okay,
about CWMP and how we got started.
okay,
Okay,
thank you for offering that.
you're very welcome.
So Lillian, you're all right with
I'm all set for this enterprise fund thing.
funds, and again, you know, you have complete freedom to expand or contract and take it any way you want, and then the committee will take a look at your draft. All
Sure.
right, and then back on the final section of the report, the overview comments on the 5-year plan. Again, Chuck, I thought it would be appropriate for you to tackle this section and make some overview comments if you're willing to do that.
Absolutely.
Great. And then the final section of the report, or at least last year's version, assuming we keep it, is just some concluding comments.
Those were really good.
Yeah, and my thought was that we hold off on drafting this section. We may reprise some of the themes that we talked about last year, but we should hold off on this until we have the draft of everybody's section at the next in advance of the next CIP in advance of the next CFAC meeting. So people are amenable. I would propose that we hold off on writing the final section here.
Okay.
And then I think this last section will just fall into place depending on what we've written in the prior sections.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we, if there are no more comments about the document, maybe I'll unshare my screen, and we could talk about the schedules for our next meetings. I think so. If we're going to aim to have a draft, you know, an almost final draft for the full committee to look at on the 27th of March. We ought to have at least one meeting and possibly two of CIP before the 27th.
Yes, I agree.
So
Yeah, I agree as well. I think we'll need at least 2 more meetings, and I think it would behoove us to choose dates now while everybody has a calendar out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
while we're here.
and the 6 p.m. time frame, this is pretty good for everybody, I would assume.
Yeah.
It's fine with me, Hector.
Okay, so today is what, the 6th. So how about a meeting later on this week? Thursday.
I won't be
No.
back. I won't be back until the 12th. So if we can do it early, I know we have a CFAC meeting on the 13th, but
Right.
if
How
we could
about
do it,
the
okay.
15th?
The 15th would be great from my perspective.
Yeah, I think the 15th will give us enough time to look at all of the town manager's recommendations and to draft our sections.
Okay. So
Yeah,
should we, go ahead, Chuck.
I can't do the 15th. We have guests from Tokyo, and that's their last day here. So, but don't let me goof this up. I can still do the sections, and you know, the 16th I can do, but the 15th I can't. That's our last day here.
And the 14th?
Yeah, 13, 14, 15, we have guests, and so
How about the 16th then?
I can do the 16th.
Okay, I can do the 16th.
Well, Betty has a town council meeting, so she can't do the 16th. Unless you multitask. And Betty, we're delighted you joined. It's great to have you here. It's great to have a new face.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to get more intelligent about money. In fact, I was going to talk to Mark separately to try to get together with him next week to just as I say, get myself a little bit more intelligent on how this all works. So I really appreciate the opportunity to listen in.
Yeah, great. All right, so the 16th at 6 p.m.
And can we pick the next one also?
Yes, Mark, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so the 16th is a town council meeting for me as well. I'll only be able to attend until 7, and then.
Okay. Okay.
Well, could we do it slightly earlier?
Well, so Mark, are you attending the town council in person?
Yes,
He does.
So you would start the Zoom call in your office, presumably?
yes.
And then we can just shut down, or as the co-host, I can close out the Zoom call when we're done.
Yeah, I can make you the host before I leave if you continue beyond 7, and then you can run the meeting after that.
Okay. I'm okay with starting it a little earlier if people want to, but I think given what Mark just said, Wendy, I think we could start it at 6 p.m.
Okay, perfect.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
And
All
how
right.
about another meeting?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the week of March 20th, and
Mhm.
and I guess my preferences are, so I'm doing taxes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so, but the taxes end at 3, so I could do, let me just back up. I could do any day that week. Is there a day that it doesn't work for anybody that week?
I can do any day except Tuesday.
I can't do Thursday.
Okay. So we're zeroing in on Wednesday or Monday.
Okay.
Why don't we do Wednesday, just so we'll have enough time in between if we
Yeah.
need to spend time on revisions.
Okay.
And then that will leave us time after the 22nd to make
Okay.
final
Yeah.
revisions for the presentation on the 27th.
Yeah, so we will send all of our semi-final drafts to Hector to
Okay.
compile for the 27th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so in your semifinal drafts, since Chuck volunteered to try to populate his tables, if he's gonna stick with that, maybe we should each try to figure out how to populate them. Mark, do you have any advice on how to paste Excel documents into Word or?
Yeah, if any committee member has trouble with tables or charts that you want to include, just reach out to me. We'll help you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it
Okay.
seems like on those charts that you probably want to take the oldest year off and just add the newest year. Am I correct in that assumption?
Or if you could paste it, the charts are accessible in the PDF of the capital plan document, right, Mark?
Yes, they are. So, you know, if you know how to paste a, from a PDF document to a Word document, you could easily do it that way. Or you can just create a table in your Word document that replicates the information.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, each of us will have the adventure of trying to figure out how to do this.
Okay.
And so Lillian just mentioned circulating each person's draft.
No,
So-
we're going to send it to you, and
Right.
you are going to put together whatever the draft is and then send it back to us.
Okay, so I misspoke.
Yeah, I guess you're the scribe.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. I'm pretty good at that. But so if people are going to send me sections, and Chuck, I realize you have company, but if you can send me your 2 new draft sections, sometime before the 16th, what I would hope to do is maybe you could sneak some time in while your guests are there to finish it and send it to me on the 14th or the 15th. And if the other folks can do the same, and then well in advance of the 16th, say by the morning of the 16th, I'll circulate a version 3 of this opus that we're writing. How about that?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Betty, if you could give me your email address so that I could send you that report.
Okay, you want me to just say it? It's my name, Betty
Yeah.
Ludwig, all one word,
Okay,
At-
lowercase, uppercase.
doesn't matter.
Okay, Betty Ludke, right?
At verizon.net.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I think that's pretty much all I had. I think we have a good MO way to proceed here. So to sum up, we'll plan on meetings on 2 CIP meetings at 6 p.m. on each of the 16th and the 22nd.
Correct.
And at the next meeting on the 16th, we'll page through the initial draft and we'll issue comments and then we'll do a similar revision in time for the meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah. Well, you know, Chuck is our editor in chief, so he will help us.
He's our
Sounds smart.
he's our EB White.
Yes, that's he
Oh,
will help us sound smart.
All right, good.
Thank you, Victor.
Thanks, everybody. Any concluding comments, Mark? Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I will get these calendar invites out to the committee members
Great.
this week, okay?
Okay. And let me ask, back on the issue of pasting, so the PDF of this document, the capital document, there's a Word version of it somewhere that was turned into a PDF, right?
Yes. That's
Would you
correct.
have access to that in case we needed to paste from that document?
Yes, I can send that out to the committee.
Thank
The
you.
entire Word document of the capital improvement plan.
Yep, I'll send it tonight, right after the meeting.
Okay, great. That would be
Okay.
helpful. Okay,
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome.
thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank
you,
you.
Betty.
Everyone.
I'll see you at CFAC next month.